How have you been, man?
I've been doing pretty good since I moved up here to the Sunshine Coast. It's been pretty good, and I moved up here to pastor a church for a whole 2.5 months before now.
Yeah,
It's
because we
all
haven't talked in a while, have we?
no,
We
yeah.
haven't done a podcast in a while.
Well, you've been traveling around all over the globe. I think you
All
went
over
to
the globe.
like two continents over Christmas.
Yeah, surprisingly.
How was it?
Surprisingly. It's weird. It feels really weird going around the globe
Hmm.
because when you're in a metal tube, it feels, I don't know, very dissociative. So you don't feel like you've traveled that far, but you come back home and you go, oh crap, I really traveled
Yeah.
that far. Yeah.
Well, I guess now you've probably traveled a lot and you probably won't get to do that for a while, considering all the borders are shutting down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's pretty unfortunate. I mean, I went over to see a friend and to
Yeah.
also hang out with my grandma, who's 93.
Mm.
So, yeah, I'm kind of thinking about them and going, hope everything's okay with her. I've been talking to my grandma a little bit, and
Oh, yeah. How's she doing?
she's doing pretty well, actually. Yeah. Um, it's just a matter of everyone self-isolating, right? And
Yeah. And
being
being
sensible.
93, she's pretty at risk.
Yeah, yeah. But thing with my grandma is she's very, very active. So getting her to sit
Mm.
down and not do much is it was quite interesting when I was there
Mm.
because she would want to go outside on very, very cold days. So even though they didn't have a very cold winter this year, I just hope that at the moment she's being sensible as much as a 93-year-old can be. To her
Maybe
credit, she's very bright for 93. So
I'd imagine that most 93-year-olds are saying that 26-year-olds should be sensible or however old you are. I don't know why you're saying that about your grandma.
true, true, true. I think that should be a self-criticism as well. I think we're a bit more sensible. Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
so obviously you've heard about what's been going on in the news, and I think most people have. Uh,
Mm.
and with all the lockdowns and everything, I think it'd be good to have a bit of a conversation, yeah, about what's going on and how it's just changing our world rapidly. So, I mean, how has it been impacting you as a uni student and as somebody who just kind of does a bit of work on the side as well? How's that going for you?
Yeah, so it's been kind of interesting because as a freelance videographer, you pretty much have to invent your own work. You have to find clients and you have to find work. And in between that, I work with my mum. She runs a school of floristry, so I do a bit of the marketing, a bit of the video work for her as well. So yeah, it's been quite interesting balancing it out between finding work and working with mom and
Mm.
interacting with friends and family and things like that, especially when it comes to something so unprecedented like this. And you just kind
Yeah.
of have to roll with the punches, right?
How's it impacting you guys, like in that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, it's not easy, especially for a small TAFE, which my
Mm.
mom owns, like teaching people how to be florists, because you have to have people come to class, right?
Yeah.
And of course, now we're transitioning to online learning, and that's going to be a challenge in itself. But um, yeah, some people are scared, some people are not worrying,
Mm.
being very relaxed about something this serious. So you kind of have a very large mixture,
Yeah.
especially with family and friends. Some
Mm.
friends are like, oh, taking it seriously. Some friends are not. Same with family. So it's quite interesting. How are you finding it with pastoring a church? I assume it would be a lot more difficult than something
Well, yeah,
personal.
yeah, it is small. It's a smaller church, and with that though, like it comes as difficulties. I've only been here like 2 months now, or whatever, and
Mm,
so I didn't really get to know everybody that well in that time. I got to meet quite a few, but this has really challenged me to have to think, well, how do I connect with 100 or so people that do regularly attend, and then how do I then still do the work of a church, but without the building. Because ever since last week, our particular church has opted to not meet together. And then this week, or even today, I think, the Prime Minister basically said no meetings, like nothing, not even at pubs. So that completely rules out churches. So it's really changing the dynamic of churches and really just making us rethink, well, what does church look like? And like, can we even still do church when we can't meet together?
Well, what do you think the point of the church is in the first place?
That's a good question. I mean, like it's always good to go back to like, what is something? And so that's what I like about you, Nathan. You always seem to ask those questions and then get me thinking, because then, flattery is the best policy. No, so I don't know. I guess like when I think of church, I don't think of building. I mean, I think of people, and that's, I think, taken straight from the stories that you see in the New Testament, the way that they talk about it. I mean, Jesus is like pulling people around him and calling them the church. So yeah, it's definitely people, but that complicates things. If it was a building, that would be much easier, but because it's a people, we can't meet together. Like that is literally what's happening right now. So how do you church when you can't connect, you know?
So it's like, how do you socialize without socializing?
Yeah.
In a way.
And it's the same issue across the board. Like everybody's having to stay by themselves. And so the fear is that all this isolation will lead to, craziness, cabin fever. Yeah. So
yeah, well, it's definitely a possibility, and I think a lot of well-minded people are saying, at least go for a walk or do something productive. Start a garden.
Are we even allowed to go for a walk? Like to what extent?
Yeah, well, I don't know. There's the thing about crisis is like this: is there is a lot of misinformation that goes around, and a lot of opinions, right? But I think the general stance of the Australian government is you're fine as long as you have social distancing and physical distancing, which is, I think, 1.5 meters away from someone else.
I think it's 2 meters now, actually.
2 meters?
Yeah.
I think, last time I checked, from what I know, which is subject to change, that's the official stance of the Australian government.
Do you carry a tape measure around with you and just like...
I feel like that's excessive.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. How do you monitor this sort of thing, and how do you make sure it's happening? But I guess they're trying to get us thinking so that we don't start doing the wrong thing and causing more problems, right? Like that's, I guess, the point behind it all.
Yeah, definitely. And
that's impacting church. That's impacting church, man. It's changing.
It is impacting church, and some churches have opted for still doing programs and having people meet up, but live streaming it. And then I've heard of some churches who are just doing Zoom sessions and just doing like a really intimate kind of personal conversation, Bible study, and things like that. So,
which I think,
do you think is a good way and a bad way to do online church if it's going that direction?
I don't know, because I mean, the ultimate thing about the church is that it's supposed to make Jesus known, right? That's the key thing, to declare his name, to tell about him to everybody. And we've always thought about that in ways of, close contact is the best way. The streaming method, I mean, it does that, but it does it in a very particular kind of way. And it makes you think, like, is that actually the most effective way we can do this? Opting for online conferencing calls and maybe even creating like online content to connect with people. I don't know. I think there's lots of different ways to do it. I would just be going for the way that actually brings people together. That's what I'm leaning towards, because if you think about it, if we're doing it in like this broadcast kind of way, like we're treating it like TV, it's really one-sided. And I think that's just what we get used to as a church, because we're used to people like going on stage and speaking to us. But this could be like a real opportunity to do something good and to like revolutionize the way we do church. Instead of being one person that leads everything, we could bring it back to how it was meant to be, that we're a community working together for a common cause, and that's to
Mm.
make Jesus known. So yeah, I'm just saying, like, I'm just musing, but I think we could definitely change the way that we see church if we like utilize it. But if we don't, I mean, I guess we'll just go to old habits.
I think what's interesting and what I've noticed in my own personal life is that you tend to start thinking differently when circumstances change, right?
Hmm.
However, what I've noticed is you can always start thinking differently, but it's when circumstances change that you're kind of forced to take a new perspective on things.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to digital media and I think online dissemination of Christian beliefs and the gospel and things like that.
Mm.
Um, I think in the past churches have opted to do things the old school way.
Mm.
From my experience and from just going to some churches, obviously, I think you as a pastor would have a lot more experience in how that's affected people. But this is all to say that I think of all times, this is a good time to innovate.
Yeah. I just think crisis can be a real gateway, and we can choose which way it leads. We can close that door and just hide away from what's happening, or we can use that door to something new. I mean, some of our greatest moments in life, our greatest turning points, weren't because of a good day. They were probably because of a bad day. And so I think this is a bad day for the church, and if we take it seriously, we could actually see really positive shifts.
Mm.
Again, that's up to us. Will we step through that door, or will we just leave it shut? So, yep, I guess.
So how do you think we
Old
can
school,
connect
new
to
school.
people? Is it a mixture of both? Is it a mixture of like social interaction, however limited, or should we be thinking about online content and those kinds of things? And
Mm.
how does practical interaction fit into that equation? And what I mean by that is helping people practically. Um,
Yeah, interestingly, during the 1918 to 1920 pandemic of the Spanish flu, I saw that a lot of churches actually closed. So it's almost like 100 years after. And I actually saw this that they closed, but they suggested that churches still be active in connecting with and finding ways to minister to their communities. So I think the method that they used a lot was like print media, because that's what they had available to them. And so they'd make lots of reading literature and hand
yeah,
that out. That way you're not risking spreading the virus, and instead you're connecting with them, but in a safe way. So I
yeah.
think that was actually what they did 100 years ago. Uh, Now you fast forward 100 years, we've got some great avenues that we could go down. And yeah, I think we got to be using everything. That's my
Do you
thing. It just,
do you think people are being receptive to the strategies that you've wanted to put in place, like for your own church?
well, it's been a week, so I guess it could
Early
early
report.
days. Yeah, early report. But I think they are. I mean, I'm really trying to connect on a personal level. So that's, conference calls like this, having these conversations. We're safe, we sneeze free. Even if I sneeze, it's just going to go on my screen and not on you. Um, Granted, I do
So
cover my, yeah, yeah. But that doesn't
one
spread.
powerful sneeze.
Yeah, one powerful sneeze, a couple 100 kilometers away. So no, I think, yeah, there's always that risk when we're in person at this point, but
Yeah.
but I mean, like on this level, we can connect, and I think that's positive. So yeah, I've seen a few positive things coming out of just my own, and hopefully more will come, and maybe we can talk about it in future time.
Mm.
But yeah, I can see the value of it. Um, One thing that I think is interesting, actually, I'll put it to you to start off with. Like, what do you find is the good value of church? Just as somebody who attends every week, like what do you get out of church yourself?
That is a really good question. I think for me, things that I get out of church is definitely the community.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think that when you go to church and you go to something like a Bible study and whatnot, you get to learn something new, let's say from the Bible, right? Something encouraging. But I think the majority of it is human contact and human relationships. I think it's most beneficial when it's with people who know more than you. And obviously, you have to be balanced with spending time with different types of people. However, I think for a young person like me, I find it particularly invigorating, maybe that's the word to use, when I talk to some older people who know more than me. Because that way, it's not merely like a social thing, hanging out with people my age and just, having fun or whatnot, or just talking about what's happening in the world. But it's, I don't know, it's kind of informative and transformative in a way.
So what I'm seeing then from this is that the big risk that we face with losing that, that weekly meeting together, is that in itself is a form of discipline, isn't it? Like it's a repetitious task that is enforcing a particular set of choices and habits, and that's a discipline. You're disciplining yourself to, instead of going to the shops or whatever, you're choosing to go and meet with Christians and to learn about the Bible, sing songs, etc. That enforces a particular way of thinking. You remove that, like when the offering basket comes around, or the offering bag, or whatever it is, right? The pay pass, if you're in a high-tech church, that's reinforcing a particular mentality that is of generosity, right? Yeah. That's a discipline. It's teaching you generosity. The same thing with when the worship band gets up to play, or the musicians get up to sing in church. That's enforcing or reinforcing a lifestyle of worship. My question is, what's going to happen when we remove those things? Will we actually have habits in our life that teach us generosity, teach us worship, teach us to be faithful to God, like a sermon would, etc.? Like all those things that were usually in that place to enforce a particular lifestyle and way of thinking, will we still be able to do that if that's removed? You see where I'm getting at?
We are habits of creatures of habits. Habits of creatures. We are habits of creatures, guys.
That's a real Office. I don't know if you ever watched The Office, but
that's embarrassing.
Now he said the tables have turned, or the turns have tabled.
Yes. It's no, we are creatures of habit, I believe. So
yeah. And habit reinforces what we believe and what we do. So remove that, and I guess that's we face, I guess, a change in the way of thinking, and risk maybe even change of habit, or maybe none at all. I don't know. Like it could end up that those things aren't actually reinforcing habits, but we still got to think about all those things.
Well, here's a little bit of a thought experiment. What if you were the last person on Earth?
Yeah.
I think even the most moral, ethical, and noble person would eventually just become, let's say, uncivilized.
Right.
Because I would say,
animal.
Yeah, this is my own opinion, but this is what I would say is because of the fact that he's or she would be alone. And I think when you're alone, you don't really need in that particular hypothetical scenario, you wouldn't need integrity. You could do whatever you want, be whoever you want, with no one around to judge you and whatnot, right? But the thing is, from what I see, we are social creatures. And the way we grow up and the way we embed habits into our own lives, a lot of it is through the influence of other people. A lot of it is through the way we interact with other people. I think being with other people keeps us sane. It makes sure we don't have our own twisted, delusional view of the world, because if someone cares about you, they're going to tell you the truth, and they're going to say, hey, what you're saying right now doesn't make sense. Let's talk about it, right?
Mm.
And I think the thing with churches and the thing with interacting with people, different types of people, old, young, and all over the place, is that you can sharpen your mind and sharpen the way you think in terms of your habits, in terms of your spiritual beliefs, in terms of all of that. So I think even the most introverted person like me
Mm.
appreciates the fact that I have a community, right? I'm not saying I'm the most introverted ever, but to some degree, right?
I'd say you're pretty much on the introvert side of the scale.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I still appreciate
Mm.
having a community and having that dialogue between people where I can realize I'm not just in my own world and my own bubble. That's
Yeah.
at least how I've found it. And yeah,
So
that's what I would say.
we may find that this kind of experience that we're going through now may lead us to realize how important community is. And when that happens, we're going to need to be ready to create good communities that help people, support people, lift people up, going forward. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think now Christianity should be exemplified
Mm-hmm.
because well, what is Christianity? Being Christ-like, right?
Yeah.
Helping people and helping the afflicted, helping the weak, and all of that. So I
Mm.
think now of all times is a good time that should be exemplified
Yeah.
in any
So
way you can, right?
yeah, just from just a personal level, you're an introvert. Are you enjoying this isolation?
Are you enjoying it?
Well, I don't know, because like I do feel like it's real busy life. I feel like just constantly going. So it is kind of nice to have like one day where you're just at home. Although
Hmm.
I've kind of brought work home, so I tend to be on meetings all the time now, online.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, I think I do enjoy a little bit of peace, but I don't think I could do it for that long.
No, I've found in my own life being isolated is only good for a certain amount of time.
Mm.
I think it's good if you want to be creative and you want to think outside the box and you want
Yeah,
to be at peace. However, I've found for myself that you need people,
yeah,
definitely.
and knowing that you'd have a community after that time of isolation you could go back to.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess going forward, I mean, for me, this is what I've been trying to think through. What will it look like doing church during this time? What will it look like into the future? I mean, I don't know if you have any insight as somebody who works to run a floristry TAFE with your mum, or doing freelance videography. Like for you, how would you see it changing just as a regular guy living his regular life?
Mr. Regular over here. I
Well, you could be irregular if you want to be.
I should be alternative. Let's be alternative.
Alternative. Okay.
Yeah,
Do you want to be referred to alternative from now
we're all gonna come to church in like bubble wrap.
on? That's where we're going.
Yeah,
That's the end.
definitely. No,
Hazmat.
a side note from that actually, before I answer your question,
Sure.
it's interesting to think about the ways that social interaction will change after this pandemic.
Yes. Yes.
That's just
Are we going
interesting
to
to
be
think
like?
about.
Are we going to be even more like cautious of people?
Are we still going to be having handshakes in 2025?
True. Will we be bowing? Maybe we'll bow.
Maybe.
Like
I don't know.
respect. I don't know.
I don't know.
That would be
However,
hygienic, though.
churches, how do I see churches changing? I
Hmm.
guess you could go for the obvious answer is and online things like that.
Yeah.
However, I don't think church should be, from my own perspective, I don't think it should be some sort of institution where it has to take place in one specific location and go
Yeah.
through specific rituals. Although those rituals inform faith and strengthen faith to some degree,
Hmm.
and are important, I think you can do church anywhere. And I would go as so far to say that you could do church in almost any way, because at the very base level of it, what I've found in my own life is just having that community with like-minded believers who will encourage you and you encourage them. So that's a pretty low threshold for how to do church. You don't have to have a stage and music bands and pastors and things like that. You can literally do church with two other people if you wanted to, in an alleyway in the city.
Yeah.
That's the way that I see it. But I don't know if it'd be a different perspective from a pastor and who's in that institution.
No,
Or in that.
that's kind of the dream. I mean, like obviously I do those rituals every week and I'm part of it. And my mentality is, wouldn't it be great if these rituals were expanded on rather than like the end all, you know? Like,
How
I
do you mean
mean,
expanded on?
well, I mean, I read my New Testament and I get to the book of Acts and it says they were daily in each other's homes eating food together.
Yeah.
And I can imagine them celebrating the Lord's Supper or the communion or whatever you want to call it. This celebration of Jesus' death. Like, how often do we actually celebrate Jesus' death at our meals? They did it daily. We do it maybe once every couple of months, or some churches do it like every weekend. But
It's a bit of a weird concept, isn't it?
Yeah, but how could we make our dinner meal a ritual that teaches us about the death and resurrection of Jesus? Like just little things like that, which could become really big things, could inform our whole lifestyle. And then as a result, that would shape the way we even act and think. So, yeah, I think we have a long way to go. And like the stuff that we do on a weekend is the floor, not the ceiling. So we should start from there and launch and do even more things that are even more beneficial for our life.
So if I hear you right, you're saying integrating more things into our daily life that could inform our faith.
Yeah, definitely.
And help our faith.
Yep. That's the way I'd see it. As long as, I mean, just to your point a little bit back, and I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but sometimes the mentality of, well, I can do church anywhere becomes like this individualistic, like it's just me and God and no one else matters. I try to tell people that I work with through my church is that I think your faith should be independent, but not individual. Meaning, yes,
okay.
you're not relying on all these things to have a faith journey with God, but you're also not like separate completely, that you're like this lone wolf Rambo out in the jungle doing it all on your own. So independent, not individual. That's kind of tagline I work off.
No, I would tend to agree. I think what I was getting at is just the fact that you can start from where you're at with church, I think.
Oh yeah. That's good.
Yeah, not to say anything against institutions or things that have been set up to specifically help such an organization and denominations as we have, as they're very helpful. I just think that if someone wants to do church, there's a lot of examples in the Bible where you can start from where you are. You don't need to stay there. You can, like you said, you can continue with the ceiling. You can integrate a lot more things. But if someone is looking to understand something or to maybe hang out with someone that is going to be beneficial for their lives, namely maybe some Christians in the community who, it doesn't have to be Christians, it could be Muslims, Buddhists, who want the best for you and who want to help you. How does that take place? Well, it doesn't need to be in a building. It doesn't need to be with a strict set of rules in terms of like, oh, you sit here and we're going to have this service and
Yeah.
whatnot. It can start by a conversation. It can start under a tree. It can start.
Yeah.
At least that's the way I see it. It can start anywhere.
Yeah, I like that, and I think that's
within reason, of course, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be, I don't know, like on the fourth floor on a ledge, dangerously looming over there.
What are you doing on the fourth floor of?
I don't know.
Okay, just checking.
I don't know. Enjoying the view.
Yeah, I feel it. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think I'd agree. And I guess the question then is just, how are we going to do that now that there's no buildings? And how are we going to do that now when we're going to be isolated from each other? And I think that's the difficult thing that I'm facing in my sort of area. But I think it would be good to have conversations with more people and to find out more about this sort of thing. Because in that way, that way we can hear what other people are doing, gain more wisdom, and then maybe make a difference where we're at.
I agree. I think it's a great idea. I think there's wisdom in a lot of advice from various different sources.
Yeah.
Not just people you agree with.
Well, I've enjoyed the chat. We should probably leave it there, but let's regroup next time and let's do it again.
Yes, and I will try to make less noise.
Oh, no, it's all right. Makes it more fun.